This is the story of how a perfectly ordinary taxiway at San Francisco International Airport transformed into what appeared to be a runway, nearly causing the deadliest aviation disaster in history. On the night of July 7th, 2017, over 1,000 lives hung in the balance, separated from catastrophe by fewer than 14 feet and roughly 5 seconds. Air Canada Flight 759 was a routine red-eye service from Toronto Pearson International Airport to San Francisco. The aircraft, a 24-year-old Airbus A320, registered as CFKCK, carried 135 passengers and 5 crew members. It had been flying since 1992 and had made this trip countless times. There was nothing remarkable about this flight, nothing until the final 2 minutes. To understand what happened, you first need to understand the layout of San Francisco International Airport. SFO has 2 parallel runways on its western side, runway 28 left and runway 28 right. Pilots flying into SFO at night are accustomed to seeing 2 brightly lit parallel strips of light stretching out ahead of them, 2 runways side by side, separated by about 230 meters. It's a familiar sight, a comforting sight, a sight that tells a tired pilot exactly where they need to go. But on this particular night, runway 28 left was closed. Construction crews had shut it down at 10 o'clock that evening. Its lights were dark, save for a single illuminated flashing X at the eastern threshold, the universal symbol telling pilots this runway is not available. That closure changed everything, because running parallel to runway 28 right, only 150 meters away, is Taxiway Charlie. A taxiway is essentially a road for aircraft. It connects the terminals to the runways, and planes use it to get into position for takeoff. It is not a runway. You do not land on a taxiway. But on this night, with 28 left dark and 28 right brightly lit, Taxiway Charlie and its own row of lights created a devastating optical illusion. To a pilot approaching from the east, the airport now appeared to present 2 parallel lit strips, exactly as expected. Runway 28 right and Taxiway Charlie looked like runway 28 left and runway 28 right. The real runway appeared to be the left one. The taxiway appeared to be the right one, and Air Canada 759 had been cleared to land on 28 right. So the pilots lined up on what they believed was their assigned runway. They were, in fact, pointed directly at Taxiway Charlie. And on Taxiway Charlie, 4 fully loaded, fully fueled passenger aircraft were sitting in a queue, waiting for their turn to take off. The first in line was United Airlines Flight 1, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner bound for Singapore. Behind it sat Philippine Airlines Flight 115, an Airbus A320 heading to Manila. Behind that, United Flight 863, and behind that, United Flight 1118 bound for Orlando. 4 aircraft, hundreds of thousands of pounds of jet fuel, and roughly 1,000 souls between them and the 140 aboard the approaching Air Canada jet. Now, how could experienced professional pilots mistake a taxiway for a runway? The answer lies in one of the most powerful forces in human psychology, expectation bias. The crew of Air Canada 759 had flown into SFO before. Every other time, they had seen 2 parallel runways. Their brains expected to see 2 parallel runways, and when their eyes found 2 parallel strips of light, their brains said, yes, that's exactly what we expected. The confirmation was instant and subconscious. The slightly different lighting, the slightly wrong spacing, the giant flashing X on the closed runway sitting off to their right, none of it registered. Because the human brain, when it finds what it's looking for, stops looking. And here's the thing, they weren't the only ones fooled. The flight that landed just 4 minutes before Air Canada 759, a Delta Airlines Boeing 737 operating as Flight 521, experienced the same confusion. Both pilots on that Delta flight later admitted that after visually acquiring the runway environment, they questioned whether they were actually lined up for the correct runway. They sorted it out in time. Air Canada 759 did not. There's another factor that made this night particularly dangerous: fatigue. It was 11:56 p.m. Pacific time when the incident occurred, but for the crew who had departed from Toronto, it was 3 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time. The first officer had been awake for 12 hours, the captain for 19. 19 hours without rest, and now they were hand-flying a visual approach into one of the most complex airport environments in the country, in the dark, with a runway configuration they weren't mentally prepared for. Critical information about Runway 28 left's closure had been published in a NOTAM, a Notice to Air Missions, which is essentially a bulletin that alerts pilots to important changes at airports. But the NOTAM system in 2017 was, to put it charitably, a mess. NTSB board members would later state that the system was really messed up, and that NOTAMs were written in a way that only a software programmer would understand. The closure information was buried in the middle of a dense block of text, surrounded by less critical information, rendered almost invisible by its own formatting. The pilots had not absorbed this detail. They did not know 28 left was closed. So let's go back to the approach. The timeline of what happened next unfolds in seconds. At 11:46 p.m., Air Canada 759 was cleared to land on runway 28 right. The pilots began their visual approach. They saw what they expected to see: 2 parallel runways. They lined up on the right one. Except it wasn't a runway. At 11:55 and 46 seconds, something gave the Air Canada pilot a flicker of doubt. He keyed his radio and said, "Tower, Air Canada 759. I can see lights on the runway there. Can you confirm we're clear to land?" Those lights he was seeing were not runway edge lights. They were aircraft. 4 of them. Enormous wide-body jets sitting on Taxiway Charlie with their navigation lights and anti-collision beacons illuminated. But from the approach angle and altitude of the A320, they could have been anything: runway markers, service vehicles. The pilot's brain was trying to reconcile what he was seeing with what he expected to see, and it was struggling. The tower controller responded 4 seconds later. Air Canada 759 confirmed cleared to land on 28. Right. There is no one on 28 right but you. Technically, the controller was correct. There was no one on runway 28 right. The problem was that Air Canada 759 wasn't pointed at runway 28 right, and the controller didn't know that, because at precisely 11:55 and 52 seconds, the aircraft had slipped into a blind spot. The airport surface surveillance capability system, the radar that tracks aircraft positions on and around the airport, lost Air Canada 759 for 12 seconds. The plane was so far off course from runway 28 right that it fell outside the system's coverage area. For 12 seconds, during the most critical phase of this approach, the controller was effectively blind. Reassured by the tower's confirmation, the Air Canada crew continued descending toward the taxiway, toward 1,000 people. At 11:56 and 1 second, the pilot of United Airlines Flight 1, Captain Christopher Bainham, sitting at the head of the takeoff queue on Taxiway Charlie, looked up and saw an Airbus A320 bearing down on them from above. He grabbed his radio and transmitted 5 words that may have saved over 1,000 lives. Where is this guy going? He is on the taxiway. 2 seconds later, at 11:56 and 3 seconds, Air Canada 759 overflew United Flight 1 at an altitude of approximately 100 feet. The aircraft was now physically above the taxiway, screaming over the top of a fully loaded 787 Dreamliner. And then the crew of Philippine Airlines Flight 115, the next aircraft in line, did something remarkable. They switched on their landing lights. Landing lights on a wide-body aircraft are extraordinarily bright, blinding even. The Philippine Airlines crew aimed those lights upward, directly into the path of the oncoming A320, a desperate visual signal. You are too low. You are in the wrong place. Pull up. The Air Canada pilots finally initiated a go-around. They pushed the thrust levers forward, but they were already terrifyingly low. The aircraft continued to descend even as the engine spooled up, reaching a minimum altitude of just 59 feet above the ground. 59 feet. The landing gear of the A320 passed within 14 feet of the tail of the Philippine Airlines A340, 14 feet. That's roughly the height of a single-story building. That's the margin that separated a routine flight from what NTSB Vice Chairman Bruce Landsberg would later call possibly the worst aviation accident in history. Had the crew waited 5 more seconds before initiating that go-around, they would have collided with the third aircraft in the queue, United Flight 863. 5 seconds. In aviation, 5 seconds is nothing. 5 seconds is the difference between a NOTAM and a mass casualty event. The A320 climbed away. It circled the airport and landed safely on its second approach. The passengers aboard Air Canada 759 almost certainly had no idea how close they had come to dying. Remarkably, neither did the pilots. In post-incident interviews, the crew stated they were completely unaware that they had overflown 4 aircraft on the taxiway. They estimated they had initiated their go-around at about 400 feet. The data showed it was 89 feet. They were off by more than 300 feet in their own perception of what had just happened. The human brain, already fooled once by expectation bias, had fooled them again, this time about how close they had come to disaster. And then the investigation nearly lost its most critical piece of evidence. The cockpit voice recorder, which would have captured every word the pilots said to each other during the approach, every moment of confusion or recognition, operates on a 2-hour loop. It records over itself continuously. The NTSB was not informed about the incident until July 9th, 2 days after it happened. By that time, the aircraft CFK-CK had flown 3 more flights. The recording was gone, overwritten, lost forever. This exposed serious gaps in reporting requirements. Under the regulations that existed at the time, the incident technically was not considered reportable. The NTSB's rules required notification when an aircraft lands or departs on a taxiway, or when a collision is avoided after a runway incursion. Air Canada 759 never landed on the taxiway, and the aircraft on the taxiway had not technically incurred onto a runway. The regulations had a gap, and the cockpit voice recording fell through it. Former NTSB Chairman Jim Hall called it the most significant near miss we have had in this decade. A former NTSB investigator went further, criticizing the board for playing down what was classified as a mere overflight of the taxiway, when it had the potential to be the deadliest accident in aviation history, potentially surpassing the 1977 Tenerife disaster, in which 583 people died when 2 Boeing 747s collided on a foggy runway in the Canary Islands. The NTSB's final report, adopted on September 25, 2018, and published on October 11, 2018, attributed the incident to the flight crew's misidentification of Taxiway Charlie as Runway 28. Right. It cited fatigue, expectation bias, the inadequacy of the NOTAM system, and the confusing visual environment created by the runway closure. The report carried numerous safety recommendations, and changes followed quickly. The FAA acted within 6 weeks, implementing new rules in August 2017. Visual approaches at night were forbidden at SFO when an adjacent parallel runway is closed. Instrument approaches using ILS or satellite-based guidance became mandatory. 2 air traffic controllers were required in the tower until the late-night arrival rush was over. Air Canada simplified its approach charts for SFO, incorporated airport-specific training into its simulator programs, and planned to retrofit new aircraft with dual head-up displays to improve situational awareness during approaches. In a quiet acknowledgement of the gravity of what had happened, Air Canada eventually retired flight number 759. As of December 2023, the Toronto to San Francisco route uses 4 different flight numbers depending on the time of day. The number 759 no longer exists. In June 2024, the FAA announced a $200 million investment in airport lighting across the country, along with increased training for new air traffic controllers and enhanced monitoring of controller fatigue. And in 2026, as SFO undertakes a major 6-month rehabilitation of Runway 1R, the lessons of July 7, 2017, inform every aspect of how that closure is being managed. But perhaps the most haunting detail of this entire incident is how perfectly ordinary the conditions were for a disaster. There was no storm, no mechanical failure, no rogue pilot, just a closed runway, a tired crew, a formatting problem in a text document, a 12-second radar gap, and the unshakable human tendency to see what we expect to see rather than what is actually there. Over 1,000 people nearly died that night because a taxiway looked like a runway, because an X on a closed runway wasn't psychologically loud enough to override a lifetime of visual habit, because critical safety information was buried in jargon, because the system designed to catch exactly this kind of error went blind for 12 seconds at exactly the wrong moment. The pilots of United Flight 1 and Philippine Airlines Flight 115 are the reason this is a story about an incident and not a memorial. Their alertness, their quick thinking, their refusal to assume everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. That's what separated July 7, 2017 from becoming the worst day in aviation history. Air Canada Flight 759 landed safely. Everyone went home, and almost no one outside of aviation knew it had happened. But within the industry, this incident sent a shockwave because it demonstrated with terrifying clarity that the next great aviation disaster doesn't need a dramatic cause. It just needs the right combination of small, ordinary failures, each one survivable on its own, lining up at exactly the wrong moment, like aircraft on a taxiway, waiting in the dark.